So the next question is, have you come across any exciting partnerships or collaborations that are propelling the advancement and acceptance of cell-based seafood, especially in relation to sharks?
Well, I'm afraid I haven't particularly, not in relation to sharks as such. I mean, I'd be certainly interested to hear of any. So if this goes out and anybody out there knows of any, I'd like to interview them. So, of course, the industry is still relatively new. So, I mean, who knows what's being created in secret labs around the world right now. I noticed that Shiok Meat, who were a seafood producer, bought another company called Gaia last year. So they could concentrate their efforts on making cultivated meat. I think there are problems with scaling up. So, I mean, there are lots of collaborations now as companies who have because it's so new. There are most of the companies have been mostly concentrating on research and development. So, it's all about the sort of scientists, and then kind of suddenly they have to start scaling up. So then it becomes about the engineers. So they have to, they need a different workforce. And so companies are starting to collaborate and merge with other companies that know how to do the scaling up. So it's quite an interesting time, and it's kind of everyone's sort of pairing off like it's some kind of dance, and it's
because we've got Stakeholder Foods who've just partnered with Umami Bioworks, haven't they?
Yeah.
And they were primarily meat before they joined that partnership, and now they printed a grouper fish fillet, right?
Yeah, lots of them. I mean, in China, kind of Celex have just merged with a company who's able to sort of build all the labs and all the bioreactors and all of those things. I can't remember the name of the company, but quite a big sort of food producer. Something along the lines of Nestle or. So yeah, it's interesting to watch who kind of merges with who, because if you don't merge really at the moment, I suppose you might not make it to the next stage.
Yeah, I think everyone is emphasizing the importance of collaboration at the moment. So, okay, so the next question, let's zoom out and consider cell-based seafood on a larger scale. How do you see this sector diverging from, let's say, cell-based meats or dairy products? What unique challenges and opportunities might the sector encounter in comparison?
Well, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but from my conversations with scientists such as Andreas and also with entrepreneurs in this field, there are some problems perhaps with seafood, but these are complications around scale up, which I sort of mentioned earlier, and it's probably more to do with the fact that there's less money gone into seafood than there has into kind of red meat research, and so they're perhaps slightly behind because meat has more of a priority, I suppose. It's a bigger market, and animal factory farming gets more attention with regards to cruelty to animals, perhaps more than the sort of fisheries get. And the fisheries do have their problems, but perhaps not in the same sort of widespread way. But now, one of the advantages of the cultivated seafood market is that there are the types of seafood that are high end and expensive, like caviar and various other ones. But actually, caviar is quite easy to sort of cultivate because each egg is one cell. So as the cells sort of multiply, you get loads and loads of caviar. So once they get that right, the price of caviar is probably going to come right down. It's going to be spreading it on your toast in the morning.
We'll see.
We'll see. But to begin with, they can actually scale up and sell it at the price that it's worth, rather than trying to kind of wait for price parity. That's why perhaps Blue Nalu are producing bluefin tuna, because it's kind of high end. And there's not much point in in cultivating cod, for example, because it's just too cheap.
Yeah, I guess, unless you're looking at the sustainability aspects, but you are right. I think if they start cultivating caviar, they'll open up the concept of cultivated meat and seafood to like a whole different group of people that probably
Yeah,
aren't really interested or focused on that kind of thing.
yeah, which is a big deal really at the moment, isn't it? It's like you know, trying to appeal to people who are not focused on it like we are, you know. So you know, they have no idea that it's there, and as soon as you mention it to them, they, you know, their face sort of screws up.
Yeah.
It has that kind of yuck factor slightly, doesn't it? The idea of meat being made in a factory or in a lab.
Yeah, someone pointed out to me that if it was the other way round and meat had always been grown in labs, the idea of killing an animal to eat meat would be repulsive. So I think it's just
Yeah.
what you're used to. But that does lead nicely on to the next question, which is, consumer acceptance and awareness play a crucial role in adopting novel foods. How do you think the industry could overcome potential skepticism or resistance when introducing cell-based seafood products to the market?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and it's one of the most important questions, I think. Certainly one that I'm kind of focused on for the industry to, and it's one that the industry really needs to sort of address. And I think they need to address it before the cultivated meat is being sold. If they wait too long, then it'll be, you know, kind of, people will already hate it because clearly there is it's in the meat industry's best interest to sort of spoil the reputation of cultivated meat, or to sort of ruin the image of cultivated meat. So adopting sort of novel foods like cultivated meat is all about it's all about the narrative, the story that they create around it now. Like you were saying, if people actually did know what was going on factory farms, and they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't be saying that meat grown in a lab was unnatural, because it's, I mean, like you say, you know, just killing an animal and eating it seems very bizarre, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you really kind of give it some thought. But then when you think about the lives that they live, and I'm saying that not as a vegetarian or a vegan either. I do actually eat meat, not very much, I have to say, but it's I'm kind of which maybe makes me a bit of a hypocrite, but I suppose the reason I'm interested in this area is because it's kind of for people like me who want to stop eating meat, but kind of enjoy it too much, and they want to have an alternative way of enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's not really for vegans and vegetarians, is it? It's more for people who like meat, who like meat. And really the narrative needs to be less highbrow, probably. It needs to be less kind of New Scientist and Forbes magazine and kind of science magazines, and more sort of Jamie Oliver and Nigella Lawson and the kind of, you know, sort of Women's Weekly or something. So it kind of has to reach everybody, doesn't it? In a way that is kind and is sort of that is going to fix. That's a solution. To problems. So how they tell that story is really important, and I want to be part of that, I suppose, which is why I've kind of come into this world. I want to be part of how we tell that story.
Yeah. I think it's really important to make everything sound super as appealing as you can, whether that's through images or the way you word things, as you said, to kind of remove it from that sciencey terminology that lots of people don't understand.
And don't care about.
Yeah. And just use like lovely images of delicious looking food rather than a man in a white coat holding up a petri dish sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's what they've done. That's what they've done with for hundreds of years. You know, it's like when you go when you go to a kind of chicken restaurant and they have a picture on the front of a big kind of happy smiling chicken with holding a knife and fork.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing with pigs and stuff, and it's really bizarre when you think about it, or at least I've always found it quite unusual. But the other thing I think to avoid is scaring people. So when you start kind of showing pictures of factory farms with all the cruelty and all the brutality, then people will just sort of turn away from it and pretend it's not happening. So they have to get the balance correct, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe much more education would be needed, I think.
Well, kind of, and also I suppose the other thing is educating children and educating kind of young people on it, because they might be easier to persuade than the older people.
Yeah, I think so. So the next question is on regulatory frameworks. So they often need to evolve to accommodate new technologies. How are regulators responding to cell-based seafood, and what are the challenges in ensuring safety, quality, and labeling for these products?
I've spoken to one of my guests, Matilda Dochi. She was a regulatory expert. She's working with a lot of the companies as a consultant. She was one of my earlier guests, and she kind of I have a background myself in law and regulation, so I understand how the regulatory world works. It can go as kind of as quickly or as slowly as they want to, really. Yeah. So it's like we saw during COVID just how quickly they can move if they want to, if they have pressure on them to go quickly, then they can. And with Singapore and America now working quite closely, apparently they are aligned. So if one of the regulators in one country kind of give permission for a company to sort of go ahead, then that will put them in the fast lane in the other country.
Yeah,
that's certainly the way it's supposed to work. And there's some indication in my mind, at least, that that the UK is probably going to do the same, which is why Aleph Farms has entered their approval stage, or their permission stage in the UK, which there would be no reason to do if unless they'd been given the wink or the nod.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to know what's going to happen there, because why would they announce it if we're then waiting a further 2 years to hear anything else? So
yes, right.
It's just not really in their interest to do that, is it?
I do wonder if the approvals for cell-based beef would be different to that of chicken, because all that we've had approved in the world so far, as I'm aware, is the chicken in the US and Singapore. Yeah. So I'm quite interested to see how it unfolds with pork, beef, and other meats.
Yeah, well, you've got meatable sausages that kind of fast-growing sausages. They're indicating that they should have approval in Singapore pretty soon. And if they've got it in Singapore, it should be given in the US. And then beef and pork is probably I wonder whether the fish might be next. You see, you've got blue nalu as well, and the UK, they were their Brexit deal might actually be in their benefits in regard to the FSA if they do it right. So they have recently kind of made some indication that they might be more willing to be flexible and work alongside other regulators, which they couldn't do under the EU framework. So yeah, watch this space, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it will be a big chain reaction, won't it? Well, as we can see, it already is. So hopefully things will start taking off soon.
I think we're going to see some interesting things soon. I read with Blue that they were expecting. There was an interview with the CEO last March, and he said that he was expecting approval in the next 9 months. So he's already kind of late.
Yeah.
So I think we should expect some more information to report on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I fully expect some big announcements concerning seafood in Singapore or the USA, or even, I mean, kind of chicken in Israel is the other one. You know, kind of Aleph Farms.
Aleph Farms did apply for approval in Switzerland as well.
Switzerland, that was it. So Switzerland and the UK, but then they confirmed that they had also applied in Singapore and Israel. So
they're really going for it with their applications, aren't they?
They are, and I suppose it's quite clever, because then it means that if all of these regulators know that other regulators in other countries are also in the race, then they actually feel like they have to speed up a bit, and can't just. I mean, when I used to work for the regulator, we worked in I worked in telecoms, and some of the cases could take months and months and months, but really they could have only taken a week if you put the effort in. So it's so I know how it works, and the FSA. I've been trying to get an interview with the FSA, but they haven't been very forthcoming yet. So they've obviously got some things that they don't want to be questioned,
but they haven't announced yet.
Yeah. So that's right. So I'm expecting great things soon. It's it's a very interesting industry, in that there's always going to be something new, almost too much, really, isn't it? It's kind of overwhelming, all the new stories. I have somebody sending me some printable milk.
I read about that last week, actually. It's quite cool. It's such a cool concept. It can be stored, not refrigerated, right? So
yeah, well, as far as I can see, you just kind of add water and stir it, and you get milk. So I'll let you know what it's like, once I receive it and I've tried it out. So
well, the world really is our oyster with this, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. It's fascinating, and I'd rather be in it than out of it. So it's good to be part of the whole evolution, the food revolution that we're in.
Food revolution, exactly. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me and the Cell Base today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all the best.
Yes, well, thank you, Phoebe.